Welcome back to Painting for Pleasure. I'm your host, Tony Visco, and today we're going to paint this barn. Let me take the barn and I sketched it out already. Sent you off the drawing already. Actually sent you off the photograph, and that's the photograph that we're going to end up working from. Let me just sort of hone in on this, just to give you a feel for it. All right, so the barn is actually dark, light roof, light sky. We'll probably change the sky out to help the light a little bit on the roof by putting a little bit of value behind there. And in general, we're going to use this. I'm not too sure if we're going to end up actually painting. Well, we'll see what happens. I was going to say painting the actual barn the color that it's had in the photograph, but we'll see. It's a good idea to have the plan ahead of time. The values are going to be basically dark and mid values in this area right here, light values over here, mid value to light values down in this area over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the way we normally start. This is we've sketched this last time we met, and I'm just going to basically come in here and wet the paper where the sky is, and we're going to paint. I'm going over the roof. Now, one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about here is the application of paint in a wet area. So I'm just going to wet this right now so that we can let it start. But here's the most important thing I want to talk to you about painting wet on wet is that, as you can see, the paint. When you paint wet on wet, if you have a wet paper, you can see the glisten in this paper. It's saturated, and what we're doing is we're allowing the fibers of that paper to get nice and thoroughly wet, and we have an absolutely saturated wet brush. Now, if the wet paper and the wet brush are about the same consistency, wet into wet. Well, let me start this way. Let me say this. This is a sponge, this is a sponge. If the brush is damp and I put it into the wet paper, what's going to happen is the water from the paper is going to go into the damp brush. Because this is least wet, that's more wet, and it's going to pick up from here and go in, and there's a little dull spot right in this area right here. So that's because water will travel to the area that's least wet from most wet. So if the brush is wet and as wet as the paper, there's no transfer. Water does not transfer from here to here, nor does it transfer from here to here. So when you put pigment on a brush, and we'll start with pigment, and I'll do pigment on this side of the brush. Well, I guess that's going to go, and I apply that pigment wet into wet. Okay, I don't have any control over this. No, I guess not. Okay, so we're just going to go right over the whole thing. I have no control over that. I can't control the water. I can't control the pigment. It's going to spread. It's going to spread wherever it wants to spread. Now what I'm doing is I picked up a lot of pigment here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add yellow ochre. Come in here and add yellow ochre as I come down into this area here. And what's going to end up happening is I'm going to have a sky that's going to be a little bit denser. This is actually no control, none whatsoever, over any of that. And I'm coming in here into a dry brush area, dry area. I got to wet this. Changing the pigment up a bit. I added a little bit of my lilac or my lavender color in here. I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to come up here now. This is nice and wet. I'm damp. I'm taking the brush and I'm drying it out, dipping it in water, taking the brush, drying it out so it's damp. That's wet. This is damp. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a little bit of cerulean blue and just a touch of opera. And when I do this, if I do this, what happens is this. You notice when I put the brush, the pigment down, it stays pretty much where it's at. That's because the transfer was from a damp brush to a wet surface. The pigment went into the wet surface, drew the water up into the damp brush. It stays pretty much where it's at. So I just wanted it a little bit dark behind there. And I'm going to add some yellow ochre to this mixture. Alright, so I got yellow ochre. Let me show you what I'm doing. Yellow ochre in here. Picking up yellow ochre. A little bit of cobalt blue. Taking the water out of the brush at the heel of the brush. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make my tree. Right, water's out of the brush, pigment on the brush, put it down, and it will stay pretty much where it's at. There'll be a fuzziness or a fading or transfer, but just to give you an idea as to what happens there, that's going to stay pretty much where it's at. If I wet it, the danger is, you talk about blossoms. If this is wet and I have if I have a lot of water in here and a lot of water in there and I put water in, that will not blossom. If this is damp and this is wet, it'll blossom. But as long as there's water in a wet area, then what's going to end up happening is we're going to just get water into water, and it's not going to happen. So now I can go back here and dry out my brush and come across here with a dry brush and start to lighten this. A little bit of lightening there, lighting, lighter on top of this, and we can crisp this up down here. This is gonna be nice and dark here. Okay, so my trees in here, I'm going to put my trees are in there in the background. They're going to be darker than the roof of the house so that they'll stand out. Damp brush, wet paper. The transfer is going to be from the wet paper to the damp brush. So if I want to create blossoms in here, I want to create water droplets in here that'll look like, let's say, flowers or leafy stuff or something like that, then I have to wet. This has got to dry to the point where it's nice and damp first. Give you an example. I'm going to take a little bit of my new gamboge and my cadmium yellow, orange, and just put some stuff in here. Now this is, again, damp brush, more pigment on here than water. Okay, so we're just putting some value in there. And in this case, what I've done is I've taken my tops of the trees up a little higher. I think when I drew this, last week we had it a little lower. I'm just taking them up a little higher and just putting some trees behind here, higher. I don't want it to hit I don't want the tops of my trees to hit the peak of the roof. I want them either higher or lower. Now we have a shadow under here. And we have dark. I'm going to leave this on the light side. I'm going to come in here and we're going to take a little bit of alizarin crimson in here, because we're going to make this a little bit of alizarin crimson, yellow ochre. That's, again, it's wet, taking the water out of the brush. And we're going to come down in here and start, say, in the inside here, where it's going to be more shadowy. And I'm leaving some of this area white. A little dark area right there. Darker area, I should say. Don't want it too wet. Damp brush. Now, here's what I'm also doing. I'm taking my alizarin crimson, a little bit of pyro red here, putting it in here, but I'm keeping it on the light side. Some blue. Okay. So my barn has some tonal value in here. The tonal value is going to be mid value to light value, or mid value in here to dark value. And basically what we're doing is we're just giving myself some barn type tone. And I'm putting on a little bit of, at the end here, it's going to be a little bit grayer. Going right over my ladder. Got some drops down here, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry too much about those. And just kill this a little bit more. So, let's do this. What did I say we had here? As this dries, let me see if it's dry enough right now. I'm going to put some water in here and see if that does what I want it to do, which is give me some blooms or blossoms in the tree area. Again, it's a matter of how dark it is, and it's a matter of how dry or damp it is. So it looks like it might be starting to some of those right there. That might be good. Okay. I want to create a lightness here. Is my ladder. It's going to be dark up there, but against this I need that light. That is to say, the uprights on the ladder against the darker background. So we're pulling out some of those. Actually, what I did is I did it with a round brush. Let me see if it'll work. If I can get that out with a flatter brush. I'm going to take my small flat brush here, wet it. Wet the brush, take the water out of the brush. Okay, wet the brush, take the water out of the brush, and to bring it and lighten it up. Okay, wet the brush, take the water out of the brush. Okay. I have a board that's leaning up here, so I need to lighten that up a little bit. And I don't know if I have what I have in here. Okay. So that's my mid-value. Mid-value, we're going to make this a little darker over here. This is not quite doing what I want it to do. Put a little water in there and see what happens. Okay, so what we want to do is to make the inside of that barn pretty dark. So I'm using my French ultramarine blue, combining that with my burnt sienna. Okay. And coming in here and saying, okay, this area right here I want nice and dark. too wet. You gotta take the water out of the brush. My dark inside there. I darken the windows. Okay. My dark under, where's my photograph? Oh yeah, okay. Whoops, way too wet. Don't want to put water into water. This has got to be pigment. And let's go and put my shadow in this area here. Using just basically, I'm using a little bit of cobalt blue and cerulean blue for the combination of my shadows here. Shadows in the barn. And we have a little shadow under here. Little shadow in here. Shadow down in this area here. And shadows underneath there as well. A little shadow under here. Okay. And we're starting to set up the overall feel of this barn under painting. Need some holes in here. Just taking some water. Lightening it up here and there. We're gonna make that some of that stuff darker. Actually, what I might do is bring that tree trunk right up on the top to the top on this one here. Okay, so we got shadow behind here as well. Notice I'm not really being overly careful. Just want to get the general feel of that. And what we'll do is we'll end up feathering this down a little bit more. Okay, and we'll put some real strong color in there in a bit. But I just want to make sure that we're starting off with our tonal value the way where we want it. We don't want this thing to be overly dark. I'm not looking for real dark back there. I'm looking for, I'm going to put this thing, I'm going to make this darker here. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, let me just put this brush down, and let me get a brush let's get this brush here. It's my long, flatter brush. I'm thinking what I might do is make a nice dark tree trunk. Coming out of here. Give it some, I don't know. Does that create a little bit more interest, I think, huh? Nice and strong. I know it's not on your drawing, but I think we can do that. Nice, good, dark. And what I did is I just took my little flat brush and I did that with that. Gave it a little bit of a twist and so forth. And what I'm going to do now is take a tinier brush, put a little water in there, and I'm going to bring in see if I can do this, carry some of this out, make this a little lighter here. Where's my little rigger? I gotta find it. Here's my little small brush. Alright, so what we'll do is we're just going to end up here putting in some twigs and branches up here to make it more interesting. And it's light, basically all this is light water with a little bit of color in it. I just picked up a little bit of tone. This is okay. Create more interest. Coming up here, Gonna be really dark under here. So what I'm doing is I'm getting my French ultramarine blue mixture, French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, nice and dark. Coming up here, now this is all pretty much all pigment, and I need to make these shingles very dark. Okay. Nice and dark. What is going on here that I don't see? Okay, I know what I did. Those are dark there, and this actually is the shingles. These are the shingles that are going down the side here. So this is here. The side of the barn. And the underside of the barn, where the shadow is. All right. Now, all of this here is a little darker. And we have some dark there. This is the stuff between the boards there. And we have, this is really, let's just do this here. Let's see. Got some stuff going on here, here. Inside my barn. Darker. Darker. Underneath. Darker, darker. Now the side of the, this is the interesting, you have a wheel, side of the board, my ladder. Ladder, the rungs of the ladder. Got pasture and fence, right? Dragging it across. Okay. Little fence area. Wagon wheel. And let's see, what else do I want to do here? I think I want to do, looking pretty good to me. Let's see. Let's get some nice sweeping green. This is all in shadow here. Little shadowy greens. And we're going to end up doing some stuff over here. Some stuff in here. Drop some of that stuff and keep it nice and simple. Keep it nice and simple. Are you ready? Start to darken some of that area up there a little bit more. And let's see what Water. Water. This water, just not too much, just a little bit. Okay. Nice strong color there. Strong values in there. Nice strong value there. Let's get a little bit of strength here. Okay. All right. My water gathered on me over there. I'm going to wet this. I need some variety. And let's get me a nice dark post in there. How about that? A little too wet, we'll make it work. Some strength there. Maybe we'll put a mailbox. Oh, what do you think? Dark to dark. Just a little stroke. This is wet into wet, guys. Do I want that up there? I don't think so. I think I just want that. Yeah, I think that's fine. Pointing up to this direction right here. So that'll work. Alright, so let's get, I don't like what I did there. So let's get the strength of these guys here. We've got a couple of figures here. I gotta let this dry a little bit here. and see if I can pull some of that out of there. Taking some water here for a second. So we don't have any, we want this subdued inside there, by the way. Don't want that light. Okay, so we're going to we got to let this dry a bit. And I'll define a lot of this stuff here in a minute. And that should be our painting. Just let it sort of set. Because I don't want to, if I put my hands in there right now, the problem is that I'm going to end up having some issues with regard to smudges. We don't want smudges. Little clumps of sort of interesting bushes. Now remember, we don't really have to overly define a lot of this stuff. That's the so one thing that probably some of us tend to do a lot of is overwork it. All I'm doing is just want to come in here and a little tree. A little too wet. Nice and dark. Inside that barn. Oh, what the hell is that? Put my fingers right in there. Huh. I'll have to make it something Shucks. Just trying to get some darks in here to sort of give it an overall feeling of grassy area. See if I can. All right. cool. Now, here's what I'm going to do. Take a knife, or scrape. It's going to dry a little bit more. No, can't scrape that. No, that's a little bit too much, but anyway, that'll work. See if I can pull that out of there. I'll have to make some birds out of that, I guess. Do I do that? Maybe I can make another tree out of that, huh? I don't know. Yeah, let's see something here. Let's do something. Just make a tree out of it. Tree behind there, okay. And help this along a little bit more. side. Okay, looks should be about it. I think I'll just let it settle down, dry out, see where it's at, and we'll come back a little bit and see if I have to do anything else.